Before cities, before tools, before history was ever written, survival depended on instinct, courage, and something even more powerful: unity. Imagine a world where a single mistake meant death, where the trees that gave life could also hide silent killers, and where every breath you took could be your last. High above a fruit tree, death waits patiently, unseen, while below, a simple moment of hunger turns into a fight against extinction itself. This is not just a story of survival. This is the moment where fear, instinct, and cooperation collide. In a world 3.7 million years ago, where life hangs by a thread and one wrong move changes everything. Approximately 3.7 million years ago, in a vast African savanna filled with ancient woodland, there stood a massive fruit tree heavy with ripe, wild fruit hanging from its branches, and beneath that tree sat a hominid alongside a small vervet monkey that was picking up fallen fruit from the ground and eating peacefully. And in that quiet moment of calm, above them hidden within the branches, death was waiting, coiled silently among the upper limbs of the tree, was a massive African rock python, its body thick and powerful, its eyes locked downward because it had been waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. The hominid sat below eating fruit and occasionally looked upward toward the branches, where larger and sweeter fruit hung. And that desire slowly pushed him to begin climbing the tree. The vervet monkey remained on the ground, calling out loudly and warning, trying to alert him. But the hominid did not understand the signal because his focus was entirely on food. He climbed higher and higher, gripping the branches, moving closer and closer to the exact place where the python lay in ambush. And in a single instant, everything changed. The African rock python exploded forward with lightning speed, and its powerful body wrapped around the hominid, coiling tightly. The hominid screamed and struggled, gripping the branches desperately as he tried to hold on. But the python's strength was overwhelming. His body was slowly being crushed, his breathing fading, his eyes wide with fear. And below, the vervet monkey screamed in panic, running beneath the tree and looking around because it knew it could not do anything alone. And in that moment, it sprinted away across the savanna toward where other hominids were digging in the ground for food, its cries echoing through the land because it knew time was running out. And above, in the branches, a life was slowly slipping away. The vervet monkey ran through the dry grass in fear and urgency, its cries breaking the silence of the savanna, because it knew time was short, and that above the tree, the African rock python had already wrapped its body around the hominid, and his strength was fading. In the distance, several hominids were digging into the ground searching for tubers when they suddenly heard the intense alarm calls, and they immediately stopped because this was not a normal sound. It was a signal of danger. They lifted their heads and saw the vervet monkey running toward them in clear panic, and without hesitation they stood and began running toward the tree, their feet striking the dry earth, their breathing quickening because they understood this was not just running. This was a race against time. Before they even reached the tree, they looked up and saw the terrifying sight of the python tightly coiled around the hominid, its massive body constricting him while its head slowly moved closer to swallow its prey. And not a single one of them froze because they knew stopping meant losing him. They immediately began grabbing stones from the ground and throwing them upward, one after another, each impact striking the python's body, forcing it into confusion. Others threw branches and fruit. Others shouted loudly to intimidate it. This was not just a fight of strength. This was a fight of unity. The African rock python tightened its coils, trying to maintain control, but the constant barrage of attacks disrupted it. Then one large stone struck near its head, and in that moment it lost its balance. Its massive body slipped from the branch, and suddenly it fell to the ground with a heavy crash, the earth shaking beneath it, and the hominid was still trapped within its coils. But the fight was not over. Now it had become a desperate attempt to save a life. Even after the python slammed into the ground, its massive body still moved slightly, and seeing that movement filled the hominids with urgency and fear. Because they knew time was critical and the one trapped inside might still be alive, but every second was pushing him closer to death. They rushed forward together, some striking the python with stones, others pressing it down with branches to keep it from moving. Because they understood if it regained strength, none of them would survive. One hominid quickly grabbed a sharp stone and leaned toward the python's body, his hands trembling. But he did not stop because he knew this cut was the line between life and death. The first strike did not break through because the python's skin was thick and tough, but he struck again and slowly the skin began to split open. Warm blood and a powerful smell filled the air so intense that others hesitated for a moment, but did not stop because one of their own was inside. They widened the cut and gradually opened the body, and from within that dark interior they saw the hominid still moving. For a moment they all froze. Then together they reached in and pulled him out, his body slippery and weak, his eyes barely open, but he was still alive. They laid him on the ground and watched his chest carefully. One placed a hand near his mouth and felt a faint breath. He was alive, but barely, and without wasting time, they knew the work was not finished because now they had to bring him back from the edge of death. After pulling the hominid out from the python's body, his entire body was covered in the sticky remains from inside the snake, his breathing weak and unstable, and the others knew the danger was not over because if he was not cleaned quickly, he would not survive. They lifted him onto their shoulders and ran toward a nearby river, their feet breaking the dry ground as they moved as fast as they could because every second mattered. When they reached the water, they carefully laid him down and carried him into the river. The cold water touched his body, and he reacted slightly, though his eyes were still barely open. The group worked together, washing away the thick residue from his body, rubbing his skin clean because they knew it had to be removed. Slowly the water cleared and his breathing began to strengthen. One lifted his head while another brought water to his mouth. And as the water touched his lips, they moved slightly. His eyes began to open. He took a deep, heavy breath, and in that moment they knew he was returning from death. His body still weak but alive. The river water flowed over him as if washing away not just the dirt, but the shadow of death itself. They helped him out of the water and let him sit, his eyes still tired but filled with life. No one spoke because the silence itself carried meaning. They had brought one of their own back, together, through struggle, and in this savanna, that unity was their greatest strength. As he slowly regained control of his body, they began walking back toward the fruit tree where everything had started. Their steps cautious because they understood that place was not just a source of food, but also danger. The vervet monkey had already returned and sat on a branch calling out as if it understood that its warning had saved a life. The hominids gathered beneath the tree and looked upward, carefully ensuring no python remained hidden. Then slowly, they began collecting fruit again and sat together eating. The rescued hominid reached for a piece of fruit and paused for a moment before eating, because he knew this fruit was not just food, but proof that he was still alive. The vervet monkey climbed down and joined them, and in that moment there was a strange connection. Different species but bound together by survival. The sun lowered in the sky, casting light through the branches as they sat together, no one alone, no one separate, sharing not just food but life itself. Because they understood that in this world, survival depended on unity. As night fell, darkness covered the savanna once again, and with it returned fear. Because night meant predators and unseen danger. The hominids gathered dry wood and built a fire and sat around it trying to hold on to their strength. The rescued one sat close to the flames, his eyes sometimes closing, but he was afraid to sleep because he could still feel the memory of the python's coils. The vervet monkey climbed into the tree watching the surroundings, still alert. Then from the darkness came a strange sound, slowly getting closer. The group immediately became tense. They added more wood to the fire and picked up burning branches. because they understood in this savanna there is no rest, no safety, only constant struggle, and once again the fight was beginning. When morning returned, their bodies were still exhausted and their strength fading, because fruit alone could not sustain them for long, so they began searching the ground for tubers, digging into the dry soil with their hands and breaking the hardened earth with stones. The rescued hominid, though still weak, joined in because he knew there was no choice but to continue. Slowly they uncovered tubers and placed them into the fire, eating them for strength. Simple food, but enough to keep them alive. These small things were their hope. And at the end of the day, they returned once more to the fruit tree, sitting together under the red glow of the setting sun. The rescued hominid looked up at the sky, understanding deeply that he would not have survived alone, that he was alive because others fought for him. The vervet monkey sat above watching, part of the story. The group sat close together in silence. No words needed because understanding filled the space between them. They knew the world was harsh, the savanna unforgiving, but together survival was possible because strength was not in one individual. Strength was in unity, and that unity would carry them into another day.